Many Medicines is recorded on Treaty 8 territory, the unceded lands of the Métis and the homelands of the Cree and Dene peoples. It is an honor to live and work upon these lands, and through this podcast we commit to uplifting Indigenous voices, sharing stories with respect, and walking in a good way with both the community and the land. Tansei, hello and welcome to Many Medicines, the intersection of art, culture, and healing. My name is Stacy Grant, and I am a Métis artist and educator here in Nistawayu, also known as Fort McKay Wood Buffalo in northeastern Alberta. I created this podcast as a way to make a space where stories are served and honored rather than extracted. I thought it was important for youth to be able to have a place that they could look to where maybe there was a path that they're walking where they needed to see that reflected, or even just to see somebody looking like them. Thank you for being here and enjoy the show. Tansei, thank you so much for being on the show and coming here today. I'm so excited to talk to you. Would you like to introduce yourself, where you're from, and what role you play in the community?
Yeah, for sure. My name is Lori-Lei Mercredi. My spirit name is the one who chases the sun woman. And I'm from Fort McMurray, born and raised here. My mom is from Fort Chipewyan. My biological dad is from Chipewyan Prairie, and my dad and my family who adopted me are in Fort McKay, from Fort McKay. So yeah, I'm from Fort McKay First Nation, and I am just so grateful to be here. I am a mother to 3 children. My partner is Jessie Marcel. And yeah, very, very honored. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it's a piece where with your motherhood journey, we kind of met when I was on the precipice of mine. Right? My babies were brand new. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. But you were one of the first people who really gave me the opportunity to interact with children in an educational setting in a way where I felt like I was taken seriously and that I was valued through my identity in the community. So it's one of the reasons why I really wanted you on here, is because I've very much admired your approach to motherhood and to working with children in general.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about, your journey from, motherhood, where when you were very young, you were a mother and you were going to school at the same time, and then kind of what your career path has looked like since then.
Oh, that's a big one. I guess I feel like, well, for one, I never knew I'd have 3 children. Yeah. I'm for sure outnumbered. Yeah. But it's been a blessing. I couldn't imagine it being any other way. I feel so blessed for each of my kids. And I think that's the part that, having my daughter, my first one, and she just shifted my whole world. It was like, okay, now here's this little baby that I just revolve around. And it's been like that for 11 years. And adding more little worlds to revolve around has been a little crazy, but I feel like it is just a joy. I try to find as much little joys in each day, to just, looking at the world through their eyes and looking at how do they navigate the world? What does this look like for them? And just, finding joy through them, which is interesting because your podcast has to do with medicine, and raising my kids have been medicine.
Yes. Yeah, I really resonate with that. Where it was something where when I first had my daughter, I was in a place where honestly I was very lost, where I had just had a miscarriage prior, and it was something where I was never supposed to be able to have kids, right? So after seeing that little glimmer, and then having that be gone, right, for her to come and then to have my son right after was just oh my God, where I feel like I've lived my whole life without direction, and they gave me that.
Right. Yeah. A sense of purpose. It for sure shifted everything for me. When I had her, I was living in Edmonton, and which is fine. It's just not where I'm from. And I was okay, well, I got to get back to my roots. I got to go back home. I got to raise her with my family and my friends, and that's just what I did. And we're just surrounded by our community and our loved ones, which is everything I ever wanted. So it's been so nice to to be a mother, and then to have that sense of purpose through my children, and then by proxy through education and how I work with youth and children.
So what did your journey into education look like? What was that path like for you?
Well, I decided to go back home, and McMurray has one college with 4 degree programs, so it wasn't really like, that wasn't my number one choice. If it was up to me, I actually didn't have education on my mind. But from the choices presented, education stood out the most. But it made sense. Like, even when I started in my first year and some of the courses we were taking, it was like, no, I love this. I love learning about Indigenous ed, or the history of, where we've been as people. And then children, like, just my genuine love for children. So it did tie in together, like, right away. And so it never faltered once I was in the program, and I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, sometimes it's when we're given that path where it does feel narrow, where it's like the world does open up at the end, where it's like it wasn't rejection, those choices being removed, it was just trying to put you on the right path where you might not have looked at it otherwise.
100%. I was at the U of A, and like, and endless opportunities, and I most likely would have went like in some sort of medical field, or like, not saying doctor, but like I was looking at physiotherapy, and which, I mean, is still very healing, and can be very good for giving back, but it wasn't my passion. which is really interesting, because like, as you mentioned, like, it's the path that you take that may not, it's the unknown, but it is where you're guided to go. And I was very much guided, like, even by my kids' dad's family. They were like, just go home, like, that's where you're meant to be with your family, and just trust in the process. Like, you hear that so often, but it really was like, okay, trust in moving home, trust in trying a program, going back to school. Even with a 9-month-old, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this?
Well, and having that level of faith is really hard, where it's like, it'll work out in the end. Especially when you feel like, I think when we're young, I don't know how young you were when you had your kids, but when you finally get out, like the small town thing where it's like, no, I got to go to the big city, whatever. Like, I did it, The idea of coming back, sometimes it's trusting that you're not backtracking, because there's a feeling of like, oh, well, I finally got somewhere where I can expand and grow from what I know. But then there does come a time where it's like, you feel like you need to go back and like tend to what grew you as well.
Absolutely. And that's an interesting concept, because it's something I'm going to be going through again soon. Is we're going to be moving to Edmonton again for education, just to continue to grow in that regard. And we talk about coming back, and it's just such a weird, like, space you end up in, where you're like, but am I going backwards, or no, that's just where I'm, that's where we're rooted, that's where we're grounded, and that's where we're loved the most, and where we love others the most. And so it's just an idea of growing, but then coming back home to help others.
Exactly. Picking up different tools that are needed. Right. And also tending to yourself, where I think a lot of the time when we are people where we do enjoy serving, we do enjoy giving back, we do enjoy helping others, it's hard to prioritize ourselves and what we need, where sometimes we will hold ourselves back because we feel a sense of responsibility, where what if someone else needs me, or what if I'm putting someone else in a bad place by leaving? And we can't hold on to those pieces, because if we're not taking care of ourselves, then we're not able to give to the fullest degree when people do really truly need us. So
no, that makes a lot of sense. That's probably like working with a lot of youth and children, and sometimes vulnerable youth and children. It's very difficult to, if I'm, transitioning out of a role or a position, or like, even just year to year as a teacher, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're not in my classroom anymore. Like, you have this sense of responsibility to make sure that they're safe, to make sure that they're cared for. And then when you're not given that, like, oh no, they got to move on to the next teacher. They're, it's very difficult to let go sometimes, but I think it is responsible to continue to care for yourself, and know that they will still continue to be cared for as well. You got to trust that. That's like, otherwise I would just be like sitting in misery every day, because I have to trust that they will be taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and also that you were able to pass on different skills and resilience to them along the way, because one thing that I really admired about the way that you interacted with your son and your nephew in particular, because your daughter, she is meticulous, you know what I mean? Like, you didn't need to but like with the boys, telling them to like, you know, slow down, do a good job, do something that you're going to be proud of, where you weren't telling them that they were doing it wrong, you weren't, you know, correcting them or anything, but you were helping them to be the best version of themselves that they could be.
And that's something I really try to be cognizant of, is we're not looking at the end product. We're not looking at, you know, it's more or less, what's this process look like? And you are going to make mistakes, and you are going to be like, oh no, I didn't mean for that to be there, or, you know, and that's okay. Bob Ross it. Like, just keep going, but take your time. Like, cause my kids will, like, if they're not like into it, they'll be like, all right, how do I get this done as quick as I can? And then move on to the next fun thing. But when it comes to like, especially teachings and, oh, okay, we're learning about dot art and Métis culture, and how do we do this thoughtfully and intentionally, and like be proud of the work that we did. So I didn't even think of that. Like in my home now, those 3 pieces are in my living room, and I should have taken a picture to show you.
Send it to me.
And it's
awesome.
because they took the time, right? And they're you know, showing them that like what they do is, we can be proud of it. Even it's not perfect. Mine's not perfect. But it was a joy. And I think that making sure that, you know, when we are in those moments of learning, and, you know, especially about someone's culture, we have to be very, very thoughtful, right? It's not something we rush through. We got to slow down. Okay, how do I soak this in all different aspects? Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So thank you. No, that was so beautiful. I didn't even think of that. I should have showed you, you know, how we have it displayed.
No, that's awesome. And like, I loved having them there, where they really like extended the teachings as well, where I think that I'd mentioned yarrow and plantain, the plants, for maybe like 30 seconds on one slide, and they ran outside and they found it, and they said, is this what it is? Is this what it is? And it was seeing the way that children's minds are so malleable, where when you put it in a format that is engaging, how they will hold on to it and apply it at the soonest opportunity.
Oh my gosh.
So it was very, very cool, where it's like, you know, I hope that that's something that they're able to carry forward with them as well, because that's like junior first aid, you know what I mean? Like, it's good things to know. So
no, that's amazing. Actually, we do spend a lot of time in the summer and fall like walking, and they'll notice things like that too. Like, they'll notice these plants, and I'm like, how do you like you learned this once from Claire, and you mentioned you had Claire Antoine on here, and she's just a wealth of knowledge, and she's taught like my kids a few times, and I'm like, where did you learn this from? They're like, oh, Miss Claire. And I'm like, what? It's amazing what they absorb, and I wish I just continue like that, they continue to have those experiences.
What are some moments that you feel like has shaped your voice as an educator and as an advocate?
Well, we'll start with educator, because I think in order to be an advocate, you do need to be educated in some regards. So as an educator, honestly, just having such a good, safe space to be who I am, like in my cohort when I was at Keano College. Honestly, I would never have changed a thing. The group of people that we had was just constant positivity, you know, like never feeling ashamed if I'm crying during a class. You know, some of these things are really hard to navigate when you're looking at historical instances of Indigenous people, and how we're learning about it, and how do we put this in the classroom, and having a safe space to share this is my story, and this is, you know, my family story. Sharing that with my cohort was like probably the start, where I was like, oh, okay, I do have something to say, because everyone's looking at me and everyone's like agreeing or supporting, and those dialogues were very important to healing for myself. So I feel like for sure, having just such a safe space and safe people to share those stories with, it was really good to help me find my voice.
Did you have any specific mentors where they've kind of walked you through I guess, this chapter of your life? There have been a couple chapters that have passed, but you know what I mean, where it's...
Oh, for sure. I would for sure have to shout out to Trudy Cardinal, Dr. Trudy Cardinal. She was, I think she was our professor in our second year, might have been our third year, but I was like, right away, I was like, I'm hooked. Yeah. I love her. Like, I want to learn more from her. And she had so much to share in such a gentle, graceful way that it was like, oh, okay, this is how we can approach Indigenous education, or this is how we approach reconciliation and working with allies and working with non-Indigenous people. She had such a informative but kind nature about her, you know, and I feel like sometimes, you know, there's a space and a place for, like, we fight, we gotta bring the anger, we gotta bring this energy, but that can't really be in education, right? Especially not with children. Yeah. So, like, okay, so how do I pull from her teachings and her vision for education, Indigenous teachings, and into myself and into my classroom and my spaces. Yeah. So she's hands down been a very positive influence in my life. Yeah.
What do you feel like you took the most from her influence?
Trudy is for sure very professional. Yeah. And you know, there's so many ways to describe this woman. She's beautiful inside and out. She's kind. She's loving. She is very intellectual. And she doesn't show it, you know, in a way that's like, I am. She's
not arrogant.
No, you know, she's very, very humble and very generous with her teachings when, you know, in reciprocal, respective relationships. And I feel like from her, I've learned how to believe in myself, probably. That's probably one of the biggest ones, is she believed in me. And I'm like, really? You think I could do my master's? Are you sure? Like, yeah. She's like, yeah, you should try it. I'm like, I don't know. Like, that's kind of crazy. But, you know, she mentored me through that process and, you know, putting me in spaces where I may not have seen myself, or just really believing in me. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know what? You're right. Like, this is not out of reach. Yeah. I can totally be in this bubble or in this space and with others and thrive and still be, you know, who I am and not have to. Yeah. I feel like she's just been an amazing mentor through the years, and she probably doesn't know it, so I should shout out to Trudy. Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. That's beautiful. And I think that everybody needs somebody like that, where you just feel so completely seen and supported in a way that isn't performative. Yeah. Right? Because I think it's easy for people to give you got it, you can do it, right? But when it's this genuine nature behind it, where they're just like, you know, you have it in you. Yeah. Right? Sometimes you need that person who is able to see you from the outside as the whole of who you are, and not the construct that we have of ourselves inside our head.
Absolutely, yeah. And then giving you a soft space to land on, right? Yeah. Like giving, you know, that, okay, I'm going to push you in this uncomfortable zone, but I'll catch you when we're on the other side together. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. It reminds me of, I had a summer student, this is when I was running a summer student program, and she'd never been on a plane. And I'm like, we're going places, kids. Like, we're going to travel here. We're doing this. Yeah. She's like, nope. I'm not.
Don't make me do it.
Never been on a plane, not going. And it took me, you know, a few weeks or a couple weeks of like, you can do this. This is what's going to happen. Like, you're going to, you know, and then we did it, and we went to Moose Lake, and she was totally like, oh, that was nothing. Like, it wasn't that big of a deal. But I feel like that's just one story that kind of stood out for someone who's like literally being put in their not comfortable space. But how do we do that gently, and knowing that, well, you'll be surrounded with us. Like, we're all together. We're all in this thing together. We literally are. Yeah. And like, we're going to go there. We're going to have fun. And she did. And when we're there, the kids are like, we don't want to go. Yeah. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So it's just doing as much as I can with helping. Yeah, it's just the next generation. Like, kind of what Trudy did for me. I feel very grateful and honored that she has pushed me gently into the unknown, and you know, but been there, giving me a hand along the way.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and that opens so many doors for youth and young adults as well. And realistically, a lot of adults, I could use a little push once in a while, right? But where once you are able to conquer that fear, you know, that student that you helped, now they're going to be able to do it's not going to be a barrier for them anymore. You know, if they need to fly for a job opportunity or do something like that, that's not going to be a barrier because you were there to hold their hand through that fear.
Thank you.
Right. So then it's, you know, Trudy has likely done a lot of that for you as well, where the barriers, there are some very real ones, but a lot of the time our different fears are barriers that we've created that aren't really there.
Yeah. Invisible boxes.
Yeah. It's all an illusion.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
Once you get out there and break those boxes that don't even exist, not to minimize it, there are some real, very colonial boxes that exist, but sometimes those ones that we impose on ourselves, I feel like we can for sure break.
Yeah. We are our greatest enemies sometimes.
I should ask her, actually, has she flown again?
Yeah, for sure. I would love to know, because it's like, I think that there's so much power in that. You put the power back in her hands. The fear wasn't controlling her there.
Yeah, and there's actually, there's some other students too, like when I took them to we went to Mount Royal University. We went to like a science camp, and they're like, I don't want to have nothing to do with science. You know, like I don't want to do anything related to science. But I'm like, listen, we're gonna go. We're gonna have fun. It's Indigenous based. Yeah. You know, if anything, we're gonna enjoy the trip. Yeah. And some students from that trip ended up going to Mount Royal to, you know, study other things not related to science, which is fine. Yeah. But it, you know, just exposure. And as long as they have those opportunities to experience these things where, you know, they may not have had in the past, but kindly, gently guided along the way, like, hey, we're all going to do this. Like, let's have fun. Yeah. And it's going to be fine.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need someone to help you through the door.
Yeah.
And then you see what's beyond it. And like you said, even if they didn't, you know, funnel into the science programs, they knew that it was safe on the other side of that door. Yeah. They got the exposure that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Right. Yeah. I feel like, I don't know if you've ever heard of dream catchers. Like back in the day, they used to have a dream catchers conference at McEwen in Edmonton. Yeah. And it's totally not what it is now, but it was like so much fun. Like it was like they had this huge dance party, and it was just such a fun thing to do for kids back in the day. But I can't imagine the influence that has had, like if they actually took statistics over the years, how many students went to McEwen based on their conference. Yeah. Right? Like those, just even those, creating those spaces at universities, at places where we were never welcome before. And okay, we're okay here. We're okay at the U of A. We're okay at any university, really. But for them to see themselves, I think that's the biggest thing is, do I see myself here? Yeah. Am I represented here? Do I belong here? Am I cared for here? Right? And so when they go there and they see, oh no, they are Indigenous liaisons or professors, or I can feel safe here. I do belong here. I do resonate with this person. Yeah. So I feel like higher education, if those things are done, more Indigenous youth will be able to attend and grow and give back to their community or whatever they want to do.
Yeah. So for you, in working with the older grades, like 7 to 12, how do you feel they can be best supported to be empowered to make the choice that is right for them? Not the choice that people think that they should make or what they think people want them to do, but to help them to be able to find a path where they feel fulfilled.
Yeah, journeying in those years are difficult. From just what I've been able to experience as an educator, I feel a lot of it came down to opportunities. What are the opportunities that we can find passion within them? So, you know, there might be, it might come from a land-based program where I really love hunting or being on the land in this regard. Like, okay, what kind of careers are tied into this? You know, maybe you can get into environmental science or, you know, and park ranger, right? There's just, it's the opportunities of where can we connect them to what they enjoy doing and not just bubbling them into like okay, do your work. Yeah. Right? So especially for Indigenous students, we need hands-on, you know, experiential learning opportunities. And also a big part that I've noticed is holistic education with them. So not just looking at them academically, but okay, where do they need mental supports, spiritual supports, physical supports, emotional supports, and how do we look at them in all of those avenues and see what are they missing and how can we get it to them, basically. Just giving them a strong foundation holistically, I feel, has been my greatest successor.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that that's something where all educators, it's so hard because the classrooms are so full. You know what I mean? Where it's like, how can you give that level of attention to every student? But if there was able to be some kind of a shift where it was that focus on the whole well-being of the student, right? Yeah.
And you're right, like big classrooms, it's very difficult. I feel for a lot of educators at this time, it's very difficult to support each student as you wish you could and as they need. And especially for Indigenous students and or other minorities or vulnerable students, it's a journey. How do I do this equitably? How do I do this with respect and kindness and care, without doing a disservice to them and or to myself, because that just leads to like teacher burnout. And so I think it's a tough gig. It's a real tough gig,
for sure. Very important job, but one of the hardest. Right? So do you want to talk a little bit about teacher burnout, because you were teaching during COVID and that was a lot?
100%. I feel well, and even since then we've gone through quite a political journey. I won't get into too much, but I think a lot of times teachers are just not supported properly. But I think during COVID it was rough for me personally, just not being with the kids physically. Like again, my teaching pedagogy is rooted in relationships, and it's very difficult to have a relationship with students when we're not seeing each other physically in person. So that was difficult to know, like, oh, my expectations are I want you to be your best, but you're at home sleeping in because you're gaming all night because it's COVID, because you don't have, there's just like so many nuances that I struggled with online teaching. And eventually got to a point where I was like, okay, like we're at the tail end of COVID, but I'm tired. I'm so tired. And so I shifted into more of a corporate role and did that for a few years, and recently gone back to teaching. So it's just like an interesting pendulum where regardless of where I was, I always felt connected to the youth anyway. So I still ended up in positions where I was supporting youth, but more so how I wish I could do it in the classroom. Right. And so I think there's limitations in education when we don't necessarily get to move away from the curriculum and we have to stick to like, okay, we're learning this today, like, but that's not what I know you need to learn today. So that's it's difficult. It's difficult to support the kids the way that they need.
For sure. So with this swing back into education again, what has that looked like for you?
Oh my God, I loved it. I was like, I missed you guys so much. No, it was a real joy. I was actually I was in my third pregnancy and I was ginormous, but I was like enjoying every minute. And the kids were, well, I say kids, but they were, grades 7 to 12. And it was so nice. I was in an Indigenous position and then also teaching, and then a liaison position and then teaching Indigenous ed. So it was like perfect for me. I was like, I could swing this like no problem. So it was great, and it was nice to be able to have the time to dedicate, like, okay, I know this student needs this. This is how I'm going to support them because I have dedicated time for that. But not every school has an Indigenous liaison who can do that. Right? And so a lot of my teaching roles were like an added addition, like you're a teacher, but you're a liaison and you're a counselor and you're, and it's, but I'm not. How do I do all these things? But I'm not trained in all these areas. So, so it's difficult.
For sure.
But no, I really enjoyed it. And the kids are, they were a joy. We had a lot of fun.
Well, I love that you got to do something that was specialized to you after doing something where I'm assuming before you were like a gen ed teacher where it was, teaching everything basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
the core courses. And this position was really fun because we partnered with the Friendship Center and, the kids got to do some lab-based learning. And like you said, how do you do this authentically? And again, in this role, I'm like, okay, well, I got 50 minutes with the kids. Mm-hmm. How do I teach them lab-based learning or Indigenous education in 50 minutes? Like, it is so hard, like, to do this authentically, to do it meaningfully. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, if I was to do it, it would literally be like, we're going to the bush for like 1 month.
Yeah, exactly.
For
right.
a month. Like, and we can do multiple, they can see the start to end finish of, how do you hunt for an animal and how do you use their hide for different things, and the whole process start to finish, instead of just, all right, well, today we are, everything's already prepped. They don't have the same appreciation for where did this come from, how was this attained, and so it's just like, but we had some fun, and like some of the things we did was like skinning a rabbit, and half the class was like super sick. And the other class was like, I love this.
It's so funny. Claire told me about, what was it? I think it was doing a goose.
Oh,
or something like that. And all the kids were just like, and she's just like, you gotta learn.
And then, it's funny because the ones who were nauseous and not feeling it, they came in later and they tried the soup, the rabbit soup that was prepared for them, and they loved it. They're like, this is so good. Yeah. So there's still parts of it where they can tie in and like, oh no, this is cool. This is fun. Yeah. And I know for sure they're going to remember. They're going to remember it because it was out of the box. It's not something that we're like, all right, we're going to write about this today. And again, I get it. We have to do those things. But when I think of, well, what's going to stick? What is something that they can learn from? Or how are they going to, possibly, go set rabbit snares and do this for their family? Yeah. So they have that.
Well, and I think that food sovereignty is so, so important. And I think that a big part of why kids are so disconnected from it is just because, like you said, they don't know where food comes from. Where it's like, they know what a grocery store is. And it's like, again, Claire and I talked about it, where it's just like, it doesn't look like that when it comes from the farm, right? Like that's a piece of an animal. And when children aren't ever taught that in the spirit of protecting them, there's a level of their being disadvantaged. Right? Just like even when you think about vegetable gardening, or when you think of foraging and harvesting in that way, when they're taught to not get their hands dirty and not interact with the land because there's, a socialized and civilized way to do it, it's actually putting future generations at a massive disadvantage, because it doesn't take long for knowledge to be lost between generations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of that has already been lost, and we're just like trying to scrounge it back up, like, okay, you're an expert in this area, like, okay, but then tie that in with this person who's like an expert moose hide tanner, and then tying it in with this person who's an expert in foraging. And so how do we holistically connect all of those dots? And it does take a community. You can't do it alone, right? And we can't do it from a book, so to speak. So it really has to be on the land with these, knowledge keepers and elders, and learning in our own ways.
Have you noticed in the kids, when they are exposed to, whether it's land-based things or cultural arts, have you noticed any kinds of changes in them afterwards?
Oh yeah, for sure. You can, right away there's a sense of weight lifted off of their shoulders. They're like, oh, I'm in the bush, or like, oh, I'm like here on the land, like wherever we might be. And you can sense that they're a little more free. They feel a lot more able to express their bodies how they want. Like they might be sitting over here where, another student might be helping with the fire, and those, you'll see their real personalities start to come in, and how do they interact as a community, as opposed to like, I'm an individual student. And so you see their, almost like a light shining within. And it's so interesting because like they're just so fun and silly, and you get to see sides of them you wouldn't otherwise. So they get to be kids. They get to be, themselves. They get to oh, I'm interested in this. Like, show me more about the fire and where did you gather the wood? And then sometimes they're doing things they don't want to do, like cutting whatever, chopping wood. And they're like, but they might really enjoy that too if they're never given an opportunity to grow in that way. So, and it's not all like labor work, or, you know, there's storytelling, there's so many endless opportunities to learn that they, you know, you really get to see a side of them that they don't even probably get to see very often.
Yeah. You know, play is a learning language for children.
Right? Yes.
So I feel like they're able to reconnect with something that's actually biologically more accurate to how they are versus, you know, you get to a certain height, your voice does that first deepening, and all of a sudden you're supposed to like act all macho and whatever. Yeah. And they're still kids.
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
That's actually one of the greatest joys why I love working with teenagers. Yeah. Because you know, there is that expectation where they're like, oh, but you should know this. You're a young adult. But then you get to see the fun side, like the innocent side or the sweet side of them, where they're very childlike and they're still very much like kids. And if I have a candy, like, you know, candies as a treat for them, they're like, oh my God, miss. Yeah. Like, you know, like you still see that excitement. Yeah. And it's such a contrast, because like physically they're like adult size, but they're like, I'm a kid.
There's still this vibrancy in them, and still this like a light that's so different from when you're an adult. It's like, I don't want to say that we dampen ourselves, but I feel like as a grown-up we give our light to other people, right? And we decide where we want to distribute that energy. Whereas with kids, because they kind of have that, you know, it's around them, which is a beautiful thing, and it should be that way while they are learning. You know, we never want to raise selfish grown-ups, but like as a child, keeping yourself safe and learning is, you need to have that desire for yourself. So being able to nurture that light in a way where it can be used productively when they grow up versus extinguishing it. I feel like sometimes the way that we move through education and parenting is, even without realizing it, we don't mean to be cruel, but we can extinguish. Yeah. You know.
Oh, that's like a big thing for me recently. My daughter got a phone for Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
And I always heard the saying, like, as soon as your kids get a phone, that's it for their childhood. And I'm like, I don't want this to happen, but she needs a phone, and she's 11 now. And so how do I do this respectfully? How do I do it like responsibly, where I am not taking away from her innocence as a child, because it's such a very it's just such a, I don't know how to describe it, childhood to nurture that space where a child can stay a child for as long as possible, without removing that spirit that you mentioned. You know, like I feel like that's such a important space to respect and to honor. And, you know, I give my kids as many opportunities to be a kid as they can without getting them to grow up too fast. And giving her a phone, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it, I'm making her an adult, and I don't want to. But she needs to learn some responsibility, like communicating. And I'm like, this is a tool, this is not something you're going to use every single day, like you're not playing on this all the time, like really trying to go with all of the, you know, the dangers of having access to a phone. So doing that as best as I can, but knowing she is growing up, which is so sad. But respecting her childhood still. She's still a kid.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing where children really do need boundaries, because boundaries can be loving, because there's a difference between boundaries and constraints. Yeah. Right? So when it's something where it is in the name of safety. Yeah. You know.
100%, yeah. And so, and I used to define myself as, oh, I'm conservative, but really it's just, it's a lot of just the boundaries and respecting their childhood and allowing them to revel in that space. You know, I grew up very quick, and I feel like a lot of Indigenous people we had to. Yeah. My mom, my dad, my grandparents, we all grew up quick because we had to. And I think giving my children the space to just develop in all these areas, you know, freely, and it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to do this, and, you know, I feel like there's going to be a shift within the next generations for sure.
I think so too. How do you take care of yourself, and what are your you know, whether it's cultural medicines or practices that you utilize, because you do hold so much. You know, how do you be able to level yourself in a way where you love yourself too?
Yes, that's a good one, because I feel like I was like an athlete back in my day. I know I'm not super in shape right now, and I was telling my partner, I was
just had a baby.
I was like, can I identify as an athlete? Is that okay?
Yes.
But it's so funny because I did just start getting back into playing volleyball and, you know, basketball, just things that I love to do.
You were just coaching recently too, so like, yes, you are an athlete.
So I think you know, trying to, again, look at myself holistically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. I do a lot of counseling. You know, I'm in even trauma counseling. My kids are in just regular counseling, just normalizing that mental health aspect and intergenerationally, right? So we're all with the same woman, and we all, you know, but see her individually, and I can learn how best to support each of my kids, you know? So I think that's just... And it's nothing like serious with them, but it's still, we do have intergenerational trauma. And so like micro things like emotional regulation, how do I improve on this? How do I do this better as a mom? So I think that's one area. And then just physically trying to take care of myself, and spiritually, you know, I have, you know, medicines I can come to and use those smudging ceremonies, or if I need to talk to someone in that regard, you know, I have some family. But yeah, it's kind of weird because I'm like so hard on myself. I'm critical. So I'm like, oh, I could do this better. I wish I was more knowledgeable on this. But I'm just doing the best I can each day. Yeah.
Well, and you're modeling that to your children too, that you are doing your best. And I love that you're setting the prerequisite for them that taking care of your mental health is not a bad thing, because I think a lot of us grew up with the stigma that therapy is bad or scary or you know, that things should stay secret, and it's like secrets aren't good.
Absolutely.
You know, surprises, not secrets, right? I always tell my kids, if anyone tells you to keep a secret from me, right? But it's, you know, having somebody to talk to where they are a safe person, and having trusted grown-ups, and having, you know, a community that you can turn to help you as well.
Yes. Yeah, that too. Relationships. That's another part of it. It's just continuing to maintain good relations, you know, with my friends, family. I think that can be very healing as well. And it's interesting because I was thinking about, this concept of healing, or like, what is this, you know, medicine? This is, you know, sometimes it's very specific, like, oh, you have a thyroid issue, like, here's some medicine, whether it's Western or Indigenous. So the concept of healing. And I've kind of come to understand, like, what are we healing? And it's all these, you know, broken parts, or something we've experienced pain from, or life itself. Like, it's just, you know, life is life. We all go through tough times. And so if we're trying to fix all of these things, what is it? We're trying to almost go back in time. To like a time when we weren't hurt, or a time where we didn't feel pain, or a time when life didn't put this burden of stress onto us. And to me, that has to be a time when we were in spirit. So like before we were, so then we're really just trying to get back to our spirit self. And to me, it's so connecting to spirit. And how do I do that? Thoughtfully and intentionally, speaking good things to myself, speaking good things to my kids, speaking good things to others, and connecting the best way I can to spirit.
Beautiful. Well, and I saw one way that I've seen you do that is you're doing like a gratitude challenge now, where that has been one of the most beautiful and like authentic and vulnerable displays of somebody doing that I have seen, where it's just you being able to acknowledge the beauty in your life in a way where you are proud to. And it's not, you know, it's not braggy, it's nothing like that. It's just an expression of love and appreciation.
You know, I think when I'm trying to show others how to be kind to yourself, or how to be kind to others, it's often like you just have to model it, you just have to do it. And so like, instead of telling people you need to be grateful, like, how can I show others how I'm grateful? And it's like the smallest thing. It could literally be you know, I'm grateful for how my partner cooked dinner, even though it's not how I would have cooked dinner.
Yeah, but I didn't have to do it.
I didn't have to cook, and I didn't have to take all that energy and time. I was able to play with my baby. So it was like, you know, it can be the smallest things, but when you're speaking those gratitude into the world, those gratitude moments, it actually scientifically shifts your brain, and there's positive after effects like beyond that moment of gratitude. Yeah. So I'm testing it a little, but also I'm grateful that you appreciate it too. So
yeah, absolutely. It makes me want to do it.
Yes.
Where I'm just like, I suck at sticking to things, but I feel like there's that level of like accountability as well when you're doing it in that way, and telling the people directly as well, where they can read when you write about them, you do a little tag on it, right? Where instead of like, I've done gratitude journals before, to be able to like connect to that piece of myself and my spirit, where it's just like that inherent connection that we have between one another, but to be able to do it where you tell the person directly, like, thank you, I'm grateful for you, I appreciate you, and not have it be something empty, have it be something that's qualified.
Thank you. Yeah. I like that it's a little shout out too on Facebook for people to see like, oh, you know, someone appreciates me, someone loves me, someone sees me. You know, sometimes that doesn't happen. We don't see it happen enough. And I know that because, you know, you just see it. Like, not a lot of people are like, hey, I'm grateful for you. Like, you're amazing. You're an amazing mother. I love seeing how gentle and kind you are with others, you know, and it can be just specific, small, but intentional. And that will fill their bucket. And it's, you know, I think something that has to happen more. Like, we need more of that. Yeah.
So where education is community work, how do you feel that family and kinship tie into that?
Yeah, I think when I look at traditional family structures and study some of that is the work that's already been done in that area, it is 100% tied into, you know, families, educators, knowledge keepers. It's all connected. So looking at a child-centered focus with elders surrounding the children, and then, you know, the maternal energies, and then the male energies. And so where do educators lie in that, and where do families lie in those structures? It's all connected and very closely connected to community and family. So yeah, like some of the programming, thank you Trudy Cardinal, because she again mentored me in that capacity, and we partnered with my daughter's school and co-created the Indigenous Kinship Club, which is essentially what you said, like, how does family tie into education? And in order for children to succeed, you need to have those supports all in alignment. Like, the families need to be involved. When we're given opportunities to connect with families, connect with knowledge keepers and elders more frequently and build those relationships, in the end, students just thrive better, right? They get to know, oh, I understand this family a little bit more because of this, and, you know, and how do I support this student now because of this new information? So I feel like it's a very integrated relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I've seen it be posted about online stuff, and I'm like, what an incredible thing to be able to offer for both the educators, but for the students to be able to be proud of, you know, instead of it being two separate worlds, where they do get to intertwine and show that interconnection.
Yeah, and I think you're right, like the duality of being, you know, a student, and then at home I'm an Indigenous person, or, you know, having those two different identities, blending those together and knowing like, oh, you're a student and you're Indigenous and you can be honored for this at school. I think that is invaluable, right? There's nothing better than knowing that who you are authentically can be honored at school. And so that was actually one of my wishes, like, for my students this year, was like, you know, at the start of each year, I'm like, what do I hope for? I hope that they can be valued for who they are authentically. And, you know, as an Indigenous person. And some of the, oh man, we gotta get a list, but there's so many like positive feedback. Like, some of the students were even like, I had no idea you were Indigenous. Like, and so they've built a community within themselves in the school of, you know, I see you, we connect, we belong.
That's beautiful. So what is your hope and your dreams for the next generation of learners, especially in a cultural context?
Well, that's a big wish. And I don't think it's impossible, but I do really hope for Indigenous students to be immersed in who they are identity-wise, and that's a very broad wish, but it can be honored in so many ways and in so many avenues in education. I think we need to create more space for them to be who they are, not necessarily just in the classroom, to be honored for their gifts that they have as an Indigenous person, and to know that it is measurable, it is valuable, it can be, and when I think of it even in terms of high school credits, like, can we do more Indigenous courses where students can just be who they are, and that can work towards their accreditation? Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful dream.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, I think that it could happen. I think that there are enough people listening and understanding, and that there is enough proof of concept, right? Yes. Of people doing that, and the amount of success that youth do experience when they're able to be connected to the things that, tie them to their community.
Yeah. 100%. And I really do believe, when Sinclair had mentioned education got us in this mess and education will get us out. And we just need more people who are on board with that idea and that notion that education really is the space, the place, in how we heal. How do we heal the next generation of Indigenous youth? How do we honor them? How do we respect them? How do we give them space for them to be who they are?
Yeah. Is there a final message or lesson that you would like to share with our viewers, our audience, our listeners, that you hope that they take with them?
I just want everyone to know that you're uniquely special. I think everyone has inherent gifts. And I hope that each person, Indigenous, non-Indigenous, humans, us as humans, that knowing that we all carry these gifts, and it's important to come back to yourself, heart-centered, and honor those, and to really find the spaces and places and people who in turn will honor you.
Beautiful. Yes. Thank you so much. And thank you again for coming and being on the show. You are one of the first people when I started this path where, from an external perspective, you were one of the first people who believed in me, and you were open about that, where I didn't feel like I had a place. And you told me that I was right where I was supposed to be. And I would not be doing this. I would not be doing my community work. I would not be doing my art if I had not met you. It would have been a lot harder for me to continue on this road. So I'm very grateful for you.
Oh, can I give you a hug?
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I appreciate you.
Yes, that, of course we have to end it in
tears.
Yeah,
end it with tears.
But I highly respected you when I first, even just, the person who introduced us, and I was like, I respect her judgment, and when I met you, it was like, yep, she was right. Like, this is an amazing, beautiful person. But then it didn't click, because you were like, you didn't fully believe in yourself. And I was like, what? Like, no, you have the gifts. When I come back to what I hope for others is really, truly for you to honor your gifts, because those are what guide you to be your best self and to be the happiest. So now I'm just so grateful for you. Thank you.
Thank you. To close off, is there anything that you want to share in terms of shout outs, thank yous to other people, any resources that you would like to share as well?
I have so many different resources. I don't want to pinpoint one and not and forget some others. So for sure, shout out to my family, my friends, my children. I am who I am because of them. And I think when it comes to, my community, I'm so grateful to be part of Fort McKay First Nation. It's just such a beautiful community to be a part of. So forever grateful for them, everyone. And for resources, there's so many, organizations within our community. There's the Nistawayu Friendship Center. I feel like if I'm going to do some resources, it should be community-based here in McMurray. Maybe Athabasca Tribal Council and any of the First Nations, McMurray Métis, any of the Métis Nations. Like, reach out to your community. I know that there's, not everyone is connected, and I just hope that we all can find a way to get that sense of belonging, because it's not always easy. So just know that you're not alone, and people are here in all of those places, hopefully to support you in your journey. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Thank you.